have mini links as well? Oh, that's good for Twitter.
Hey, I just started recording, so I could just give a little bit of an introduction. Hi, this is Chandler Klebs, and I started another one of these vegan pantheist hangouts like we used to do a long time ago. And Pafo hasn't joined yet. He's still getting ready or cleaning the house or whatever it was he said. But I put the link into the Facebook group chat thingy that he set up, and so already I have 3 people here that I don't really know, although I'm pretty sure I was already friends with Alice D on Facebook because I'd seen her posts somewhere. Because I'm friends with most of Pafo's friends these days because there's so many good posts to share on Facebook. So okay, so anybody who wants to introduce themselves, if they want to be recorded telling who they are and what they do, that's totally fine. And you guys were talking about some cool stuff, and there's these cool websites that are in the chat now here. Huh. So now, does anyone want to say anything, or should I just go through these websites?
Well, I think it's good to ask people questions. Interviewing is great. If you just, people aren't always necessarily going to just come out and say a bunch of things, but if you want to ask us a question, go ahead. I'm a vegan. Ask me a question.
Yeah. Yes, actually, that's perfect. Like the first question everybody could answer is like, how long have you been vegan, for example?
11 years. My vegan anniversary is October 1st, 2007.
And no surprise, mine is the same date.
Oh, good timing.
Oh, really? How did that happen? The same date?
Together.
A joint decision, it sounds like.
It was.
So I take it you two know each other.
Oh, a little.
We've hung out for a few years.
A few years.
Cool.
God, what are we coming up on, our 20th now?
Next year will be our 20th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Cool. And what about you, Alice?
Well, for me, I've been meat-free since 1979, so it's been a really long time, and I was the first vegetarian I had ever met at that time. I hadn't even been told that it was possible to be vegetarian until an hour before I became one. And so I identified with vegetarian for a long time because that was what we, back then, that's kind of what we knew about. We didn't, that was a radical stance in favor of animals. But then I took a series of, I wanted to be a vet, and I took a series of animal science courses at a university. And in those courses, it was teaching people how to factory farm. I mean, to be really blunt about it. I went through all the factory farms, the battery chicken barns, and the pig farrowing crates, and the dairy barns. And, it was just really, really horrible. I was so horrified at where even eggs and dairy products were coming from that I just really cut down on any use of that, still thinking that it was necessary, but cut down on it to the point where it was really, really very small part of my usage. And I focused more on eating plant foods. And then when I moved to Lake County in 2000, in the millennium, I came across some new people, and they told me they were vegan. I was like, vegan, what's that? And they were, well, we don't eat any animal products. Really? Is that right? Yeah, totally. Oh, great. So that's when I became vegan, about an hour after that conversation. So it was, for me, it's been a process of uncovering the possibility of veganism, because through my life, it hasn't been really obvious that it was possible. And not knowing people that were vegan. That's why I think it's so important for vegans to speak out, because there are still people that don't know that you can be vegan. And I opened a raw vegan restaurant just shortly after that conversation, and was one of the original pioneers in the raw vegan movement. Yeah, a friend of David Wolf and some of the other people that have been very vocal about the benefits. And it really started to sink into me how far away humans were from nature and their natural diet. And so I started to do some research into, and I also did some my personal lifestyle research into living a natural life. I went out to a local area of about a square mile of wilderness. It's really beautiful. So it's a whole canyon, but it's a square mile, but it's surrounded by, many, many square miles of wilderness. And I lived there in a teepee for a year. And I really, really wanted to, my point in doing so was to really get back in touch with nature. And that kind of comes to, I think, my pantheist leanings, is that I really do look at what nature does as my guide. I don't think of what Jesus does or would do or what Buddha would do, or I think about what nature would do. And I think about what humans would do in a natural environment and how they would survive. And so I look at our closest relatives. I look at the chimpanzees and the gorillas and the orangutans that we're so closely related to. And I also look at the other animals, the carnivores, the mountain lions and the bear, and the omnivores like the bears. And I see how they physiologically present themselves and how that results in their dietary niche. And I look at humans and I say, well, I really can't say that humans are anything but vegan. We are vegan after weaning. With a possible exception, a few bugs and maybe the odd thing that we could possibly catch if we were really, really hungry or scavenge. So with that understanding, I just come to the whole subject as not so much like we should be vegan, but we are vegan. Some of us just don't know it yet. And I think that provides me with a much stronger foundation with which to make an argument. And it's an important element of how I approach vegan outreach.
Very nice.
Yes, very, very nice indeed.
Yeah.
So I love that you have actual farm experience. I do a lot of online advocacy, like a ridiculous amount of it, and one of my favorite things to happen is to have somebody talk about how you vegans have never been on a farm. I actually grew up on a farm, raising and butchering animals and eating them, and came from that to veganism over a long span, and so it's really wonderful to have other vegans that actually have that firsthand experience and can speak to it and say, no, what you're saying is BS. This is actually how it's happening there. Good on you.
And not just how it's happening, but how people are taught to make it happen. That's what I really felt was so wrong. It's not just that there's some, sadistic people out there doing this. No, this is how people are being taught. This is the science of animal husbandry. And it's just really hurtful to me. And it was hurtful to me as a vegetarian at that time that this is how people were being taught. In fact, it's why I decided to not go into veterinary work, even though I loved animals. When I went into the vet's office, and because I had to work for a summer in the vet's office to be able to apply, it seemed as though half of the animals that were coming in were to be killed, and the other half were to be mutilated. And I was like, this is what you do for a living? You kill and mutilate animals? I was like, oh, I think I'm going to step away from that. And so I went into other things. But it's very, there's very few professions in this world where you can make a decent living treating animals kindly. And I think that's a sad reflection on our world and the way things are structured with respect to non-humans.
One of the things that's been, and I've been talking with Sean about this these last couple of days, one of the things that helped me a great deal as a vegan when I went back to school was the work of Antonio Gramsci. And Gramsci was a Marxist scholar and a politician. He was Italian and he died in prison in his early 40s. And he wrote a lot about hegemony, the idea that some ideas have so much cultural capital that when you participate in them, when you're raised to participate in them, you are blind to anything outside that space of cultural capital. And this is being contested right now, obviously, in racial justice movements, where people of color are asking children of the colonizers to look at their privilege. You know, look at what you're not otherwise seeing, or what you've been raised not to see. And when you apply this to humanity's treatment of animals, you really see how we are raised, as you've said, Alice, to participate in a systematic culture of animal usury that takes place in the food industry and the entertainment industry and the medical industry and the clothing industry. And it's so pervasive that when you draw people's attention to the idea that, for instance, chicks are macerated if they're male, right? It's a fact. Thousands of chicks, millions of chicks macerated because they're male, because they're not useful to the egg industry. People will say anything, do anything, not to have to look at that simple fact, because they're so invested in that hegemonic culture. And it's been very helpful to me to sort of look at the attitudes of non-vegans through that hegemonic lens. They don't know and don't see. And Gramsci even said that when people are made to see, when they are made to begin to look at these things, the fight they put up is extraordinary. And we see this as vegans, right?
Yeah.
Oh yes, definitely.
So that's been really helpful to me of late, like in my most recent conversations with non-vegans over the last couple of years, because it helps me to see, I guess, from a philosophical perspective, where the cultural capital is, where we are working in the term is counter-hegemonic way to create a new paradigm, and why people fight so hard against us.
Yeah, and the thing is, I find what's very bizarre, and I think this is the hardest for people to accept, and why they continue trying to defend carnism, is because they don't want to view humanity as doing something that profoundly evil as what we do to animals, because they want to think of themselves and everyone around them as good people. And I came to a point in my life where I couldn't do that. It's like I just can't. And it's really hard too, because and I'm sure Poffo and anyone who's known Poffo for a long time, we're sort of misanthropic. We're just not really big fans of the human race. You know, it's hard to be.
Like that old joke, what do you miss most about being vegan? My faith in humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have to say, I really do like humans. Like I like all of you. I like vegan humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in fact, I have a huge group of vegan humans, and every time I meet a vegan, I feel as though I'm meeting virtually an angel incarnate. You know, someone who really walks their talk, who really is a good person. You know, who's morally consistent between what they put on their plate and the animals that they pet on the head, or there's a moral consistency there. And I have a lot of respect for every vegan. I treat every vegan as if I'm talking to a saint, a living saint. And I mean that quite clearly, because there's very few people that are willing to be as moral and as ethical as a vegan.
Yeah, my favorite joke about that, every time I meet a vegan, are we best friends now?
It's kind of like that. It's sort of like for example, when I do come across somebody else who I find out is vegan, then it's like, oh man, I love this person all of a sudden, because such a person's so rare to find, And the thing is, like, just about all the vegans I know are online. Like locally, it's kind of an issue, like we've talked about in previous podcasts. And so that's the thing about it, is it's so rare. And my faith in humanity would probably be improved if I was in an area where there were more vegans. But there's only like, well, 2 or 3 max that I know of in Lee Summit for sure. And that's the thing. And yet, although I did find out recently, the restaurant Waldo Pizza in Lee Summit, they have a whole vegan menu of like, they have like, you can get the Daya cheese and stuff like that on cheese pizzas that are totally vegan and cool stuff like that. And of course, all the vegetable toppings that you add would be vegan too. And all they even have the crust that doesn't have eggs. They even have a gluten-free version. So that's cool. That's like that's probably the best restaurant that we have as far as veganism goes in Lee Summit, because I don't know if it where you people live, but I'll tell you, Lee Summit is a weird town. I've lived here since I was 9 years old, and this is a town there's so many churches and there's so many banks, and that's what this town is mostly full of. And the rest of the businesses are like Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, Burger King, Dairy Queen. Like so the restaurants are just all these fast food animal products pretty much. But I work at a grocery store called Hy-Vee, which is a place, there's like 8 states in the U.S. that have branches of the Hy-Vee store. So it's your typical grocery store. And now I work in the health market there, and one of my best friends works over in produce now. We both were courtesy cooks up front stacking groceries, and now we've moved to other departments, and it's a lot easier. But yeah, but Lee Summit's just a really weird town. I don't know. I don't have very many local friends.
Is that the Lee Summit in Missouri?
That's right, Lee Summit, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the western part of Missouri. It's a strange thing.
Yeah, you probably feel more at home in California, especially Northern California. We have a really interesting community here. People tend to be very open-minded and very left-leaning, and there's veganism is well known and well established. We still haven't gotten a vegan burger at McDonald's, but there's a lot of my restaurant was one of the, I guess, original vegan restaurants that I knew of. And then there's been lots of vegan restaurants opening up in San Francisco lately. Amy's opened up a restaurant, and
when I got online and was just Googling like vegan restaurants, most of them were in California. So I know what you're saying there.
It's true, yes.
Yeah, and Paffa was in California. I think he was in LA before, but now he moved to Portland, and he says that's kind of a highly vegan city, actually.
Yeah, Oregon is where people move from California. They'll move up to Oregon, so the kind of hipper, mellower people move up to Oregon.
Yeah,
I went a little further.
It's a little expensive. Yeah, even hipper, you move up to Vancouver and places like that. I actually hear there's some really good statistics in Vancouver as far as vegan and vegetarian people. Like there was a very high percentage of people in that category among the millennials.
I actually started out in California, then moved all over the States, but now I'm up on the eastern coast of Canada, and we have lots of vegan opportunities here. I wanted to ask, Chandler, you happen to be familiar with Philadelphia, Missouri?
Actually, I've never been there.
But it's the reason I ask is because my folks used to have a farm out there.
Yeah, well, I don't get out much, considering anywhere that I can't walk to, I simply don't go. We don't have a car. In fact, we haven't for how many years? So I don't get out of Lee Summit anymore.
Gotcha. I was just mentioning it because Missouri. I'm with you. That would be a hard place to be vegan, I think.
Well, we live
Yeah,
on... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say the thing about Missouri, at least this town that I know of, is it seems to be a very religious place. It seems to be that way because almost everybody's a Christian, goes to some church. There's in this town, it's got like every Protestant denomination. It's got a few Catholic churches. It's just like this church city. And as a bizarre result of this, and the kinds of things I see online, I see religion used as a defense for continuing to kill and eat animals all the time.
Oh yeah, it's a big problem. It's one of the harder things to counteract with people too. They found, I especially noticed this when I talked to people from India who were vegans, and they were surrounded by large numbers of vegetarians. I said, well, talk to the vegetarians. Maybe they'll convert. They said, no, it's part of their religion. I can't move them at all. It's part of their religion to drink the milk of cows.
Wow.
So they were very frustrated to feel very isolated among the sea of vegetarians in India. Of course, we're somewhat isolated among the sea of carnists. It's a little different, but even so, there was that religious indoctrination that was really hard to get past. And I see it a lot with people. God said it's okay to eat meat. And being something of a religious scholar, I have I have good ways to counteract that with talking to them on a direct religious level, talking to them from their own scriptures. But there's still that I get coming out. Now, it usually I just go back to Genesis if I'm talking to a Christian, and it works a little bit with Jewish people as well, because I think they also use the first 5 books of the Bible. So that helps to, but then they say, well, no, but things changed, and they said we could eat meat, because the whole idea was that the flood, apparently, God gave Noah the commandment to go to eat meat. And I said, well, that's because there weren't any plants, because they just flooded, So it was, and by the way, did you also notice that the human lifespan went down from about 1,000 years at max to about 120 years at max? Did you notice that too? And they were like, oh.
I noticed that too. Yeah,
right, at the same time. So it's significant. I think that, if you look at our physiology, we just can't process the saturated fats.
Yeah, and I've never been able to make sense out of it, really. And that's the thing, is I've talked about it a lot with Pafo, just how upset I am at my Christian upbringing and being taught this stuff. And I look at it now and it makes absolutely no sense. I'm like, wait, people believe that this God dude created everything and designed everything and designed animals that feel pain and gave humans permission to kill and eat them. It's like, oh, well, this God guy doesn't sound very nice.
Well, there's some. Okay, go ahead. Let me address that afterwards. I'll write a note to myself.
Sure. No, go ahead. I'll wait. But I have something I want to, but I can wait. Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say that there's some debate as to whether they are the same deities, if they're even, of course, if you accept the truth of it, because the behavior of the creator God, the one that's mentioned in Genesis, which commanded humans to eat herb-bearing seeds and all seed-bearing herbs and the fruit of every tree, was actually different to the Lord of the planet that then took over and commanded animal sacrifice and war and other sorts of things, other sorts of unfriendly behavior. And that what actually took over as Lord was an evil entity, and that commanded the eating of meat and the sacrifice of animals. And that there was a very big philosophical difference just after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden, in which Cain and Abel both offered items to this Lord. And the Lord did not like the vegetables that Cain offered, but did like the dead lamb that Abel offered. And Cain was so horrified that Abel had taken his hand against one of their beloved lords, their sheep, that he actually slew Abel because he was concerned, like just like you might kill an axe murderer, he killed him as somebody that was a deviant, and it was like a retribution killing for the killing of the lamb. So these days we've kind of lost that understanding. I mean, if you look at the Bible from a vegan perspective, you can see the teaching, and you can also see that there was a clear deviation away from goodness, even from the highest levels of the one that was supposedly ruling the world. But that's all, I think the easy answer to someone who says that is your mythology shouldn't trump your ethics.
Well,
and go ahead.
I'm dying to say this. I'm sorry. So that is actually exactly where I meet people with this. Is I say, look, is it a sin in your religion to not eat meat? Can somebody be a vegan and be a part of your religion? And if the answer is yes, then you're saying it's a choice and not a necessity. So you don't have to be doing that. You're choosing to kill. And then I just.
And by the way, doesn't it say "Thou shalt not kill"?
It seemed to be in there, yeah.
and it's very important, the use of that word. The use of that word "kill." In English it comes across as "kill," and it's a bit ambiguous. But in the actual original language in which it was written, it means to kill as a lion kills, like in a predatory manner. So it's different to how you might say kill someone in revenge, or kill someone in self-defense, or things like that. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill in self-defense. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill in revenge. It says thou shalt not kill as a predator, which means you shouldn't kill an innocent.
Nice.
And all of these animals that are being killed for food are innocents. There's no question.
But my strategy is always just to get out of the religious conversation as fast as I can, because I don't want to be stuck in that mire. I just want to say, okay, so it's a choice. Okay, so we can talk about this as a choice and not worry about religion then.
Right. I tend to go in a little deeper because I have specialized knowledge there.
Sure.
But I can see that just simply removing yourself from the books or the mythology. That's why I say, I reference mythology, because really this is nothing more than mythology that people are referring to. And
sure.
If they think that there's some historical fact, I say, well, prove it to me. What proof do you have? Oh, I have a book. Well, that's not proof.
And it goes so much beyond that. And I wish Pafa was here to jump in on this conversation. But this goes beyond proof. There's this whole thing of there's pretty much the mainstream Christian culture, and then there's atheists and skeptics and scientists, whatever. They're like, show me proof, scientific method. We have to have evidence. We have to have verifiable fact of something happening. It can't just be in a book. And that's nice and all, but I say that this goes far beyond that, because I say that this is about ethics for me and not hurting the animals. And so it doesn't matter the existence or lack thereof of any gods, or which is the true religion, matters not at all. And it's taken me a long time to get to that point, because I've had so much anger at religion and stuff in my past. But now I've gotten to that point where it's like, I'm just going to bypass that. Not going to talk you out of your religion. The point is, it doesn't matter. You got it. And I hope that people will become educated and do what's right, regardless of what their holy books or their God they believe in says.
I think that where religion conflicts with ethics is where religion should be disregarded. Okay, because if it really is the ethics that matters, and what is the key ethic? If you go around to all of the religions of the world and you ask them, what is your basic rule? How do you live your life? How do you know good from wrong? How do you know what is your moral compass? And they will say, well, I try to see myself in the other person's position, and I see what they would wish me to do for them. So, do unto others, or however you want to express it. That's
the golden rule.
Golden rule. or even the platinum rule, which is where you actually talk to the other person and do unto them as they wish to be done unto. But with animals, we can't really, it's a little harder for us to talk unless we're highly telepathic. So we have to simply put ourselves in their position and say, what would they wish me to do to them? And that's the fundamental rule of ethics. Every single ethical rule that is valid has to be consistent with that rule. It's called what I call the law of reciprocal ethics, because you're considering the reciprocal of your current position is their position. You're putting yourself in the reciprocal position. And it requires a certain amount of empathy, emotional telepathy. It requires what would it really feel like being in their shoes and in that position? But I think it is the key element that is universal. It doesn't matter whether you're talking to a Buddhist or a Native American or a Christian or a Jew or a Zoroastrian or whatever, or an atheist even, or a scientist, because you can say, well, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there's always some way to state that law in that religious.
There
philosophy.
always is.
I'd like to interject here, because that doesn't always work for pagans. I've been pagan for 36 years, and paganism is so syncretic and so individual that there's no central dogma or central tenets of belief. And so while you might be able to have a conversation with a pagan about the golden rule or about the law of reciprocity, and most people, most of the time, will go down that road with you, very often what's happening, at least what's been happening in paganism since I've been pagan, is what I mentioned in the post that I made last night, which is a lot of pasturbation. Pagans are very concerned with the history, the fragmented history, pre-Christian history of the religion, with the way it manifested across cultures. And there's a great deal of effort put into revitalizing, reimagining, and reconstructing those religious ways. And sometimes that works to the benefit of the earth and the animals, but most of the time, what ends up happening, at least, and this is a critique of my own faith, I have found that people have a very strong backward gaze and a strong desire to reconstruct, and often their sense of ethics takes a back seat to that. And that was how I ended up in a conversation recently with a woman who practices animal sacrifice. And I myself have written about the problem of animal sacrifice from a pagan theological perspective. And I can speak about the theological problems of animal sacrifice. Essentially, the short of the argument is that the life of the animal belongs to the animal. And if you're sacrificing the life of the animal, you're sacrificing something that doesn't belong to you. So in essence, you're stealing something to offer it to a god. And you can't expect, using your law of reciprocity, Alice, you can't expect a positive outcome from that if you're sacrificing something that doesn't belong to you. And so I got into this conversation with this woman a few days ago, and it's someone I know fairly well. She was an informant for one of my papers. Not one of my vegan papers, one of my religious papers. And she really does not care. It was appalling to have her just not... I mean, I've had other conversations with her about environmentalism and about, what is our moral compass as pagans as it regards, I don't know, not using plastic, right? And her faith is focused on the reconstruction of history and belief in the supernatural. And I can't find a moral compass in that woman.
She doesn't have one. She doesn't have one. No, there is something called lost souls. These are people that are disconnected from the totality. If you are a lost soul, an individual, you are so far removed from it, you don't care. You don't care. And those people I do not argue with. I don't bother. I choose another person. There's fertile ground and there's infertile ground, and they are infertile ground.
Yeah, I think she really is, because she's.
So give it up. That's
well, I've had to. I mean, I mean, you know, by the end of the I kept my temper. I tend not to I tend not to allow myself to be baited or to flame online or any of that sort of thing. Most of the reason why you don't see me in the Pantheist group is because I'm not terribly active online as it is, you know? In this case, I kept my temper and I remained logical and I remained ethical and I did what I could to further the conversation while she trolled me.
She may be trolling you. And also what I look, the reason I called our group We Care About Animals is because that's what I look for. If a person, I say to them, do you care about animals? If they say no, I say, okay. And I don't talk to them anymore. That's my divining rod, if you like. That's how I determine whether I should talk to them about veganism or not.
Yeah.
If they say they don't care, I don't bother. There's nothing, they're lost soul, they're disconnected, and there's nothing I can do. Now, animal sacrifice, what I would talk to is this, because these people can only be reached by virtue of selfish arguments. They can only be reached by virtue of whether it's good or not for the health, or whether or not, now in this case, you've got a person who's acting ritually in a way that harms another creature.
Yes.
Now, she needs to understand, and maybe she does, maybe she does not, that ritual activities are symbolic, that they're not something done to refer to the left side of the analytical side of the brain, but there's something visual done to communicate to the right side of the brain. And so what they're communicating is death through sacrifice. Yes. And I've had the same conversation with people from, you know, the peyote people down in Mexico to the Native Americans to the people, you know, pagans that still practice ritual sacrifice. Jewish people still practice to some extent. And it basically comes down to, what are you symbolically saying with your ritual? And is that what you really want to be saying with your ritual? Do you really want to be saying death with your ritual? To who? To you? You know, because really, you know, these laws are fairly immutable, and they work through the nature of the conscience. The conscience, when you make an error, it finds a way to correct it. And that's our self-correcting mechanism that we have within each of us. And this is why reciprocity works as a really good moral compass. Now, in the what I would call the white pagan traditions, they usually will say, "Do what thou wilt, and it harms no other." In the dark pagan traditions, they'll say, "Do what thou wilt," or "Do what thou wilt." So, if you're dealing with a dark pagan practitioner, I would just step back.
Well, and having been pagan for 30 some odd years.
What is that?
It's
my dog. I think he ate a foxtail and he's kind of gagging on it. Sorry, it does sound a little weird in the background.
Poor guy.
I know he's really
So with this particular individual, she doesn't think of herself as a dark practitioner, but as someone who is a pan-polytheist, as I am, from a purely woo perspective that doesn't necessarily jive with a pantheistic perspective, she creeps me the fuck out.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason. She is a dark practitioner. A dark practitioner, the definition of a dark practitioner is someone that does something non-consensually to another. You do something non-consensually that harms another, you are a dark practitioner by definition. Yeah. If you're a gray practitioner, you'll do something that you think is good for another, but you haven't asked their permission. If you're a white practitioner, when you do something to another, you've asked their permission. So, the gray practitioner is practicing the golden rule, the white practitioner is practicing the platinum rule, and the dark practitioner is not using any rules. And they are not ethical people.
And this is why, in the article that I wrote, I talked about sacrificing that which you actually own. The wine you made, the bread you made, the flowers you grew, anything that is the product of your own effort, in a reciprocity arrangement with the divinity, is an acceptable sacrifice. So if I grew flowers and I wanted to make an offering to Bridget, I could offer my flowers to her because I grew them, or something that was the product of my earnings. Let's say I didn't have time to grow flowers, but I earn a wage, and so I bought flowers, right? So these are things that arise from my own effort. In my case, I might write poetry, or I might play a piece of music or something like that. But to use your phrase, dark practitioners take what doesn't belong to them and offer it. And I think that this is something that, because most people believe in the ownership of animals, that you can own another being, that they believe it's all right to then do what you will with that being.
This is very key. This is very key. And this is the key that a lot of the great philosophers in our movement have pointed to as the essential element keeping veganism from becoming really mainstream. And it is the fundamental idea that another being can be owned.
Yes.
Now you'll see that my little image there, if you read it, it says, because the only life that belongs to me is my own.
That's right.
And that is my statement of why am I vegan? Well, because the only life that belongs to me is my own.
That's right.
And there is no other life that belongs to me, and I have no right to take it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, see, that's just the thing about it, is that, like, how can somebody? I mean, none of us like to be owned. No, none of us want to just be somebody else's slave, and it's like that. That's why what animals go through is comparable to slavery of the blacks a long time ago. It's the exact same thing. The whites thought they just owned the black people, and it's like, how is it any different? In fact, you would think, this isn't always the case, but you would think that black humans, as well as women in particular, because they have been treated so badly throughout history, would be the first people to understand the logic behind veganism. But then again, there are more vegan women than men too, so maybe there's something to that.
Right. Right. Yeah, women were thought of as chattel, and so I think that although it's not necessarily within our lifetimes, and most of us alive today don't remember those times, we can certainly find historical, writings and things where women were treated as property, where women weren't allowed to vote, where there was a great deal of prejudice against women being in positions of leadership.
I think the dog wants to join this conversation.
Well, yeah, they always got something to say. They're having fun.
Sometimes I go over to my friend Lucas's house, and they have a dog and 4 cats and a turtle. It's a zoo over there.
We travel so much that we do have a companion cat, but he travels with us, and we're not in a position in our lives to be able to take care of any other animals than him. So there you have it.
Yes, the dog people are my teachers. They are, I'm part of their pack. I am their human, and they let me know what's like to be a natural being. I think dogs are the great ambassadors, probably cats also, the great ambassadors of nature, to try to teach us humans how we can be better animals. And if only we listen to them and understand, try to understand what they're trying to tell us. So I consider my great spiritual teachers on this planet to have been non-humans, because I really do want to know what it means to be a natural human and in harmony with nature.
I agree with that. All of the animals who have been a part of our lives have been my teachers. The cat person who is a part of my life right now, I like to think of him as the boy who lived. He's a black cat we rescued after he was struck by a car. And we paid for his surgeries and we paid for his care. And he still has some health problems, but he lives joyfully, and he teaches me how to live joyfully.
I have a feeling there's a story about the horse there.
I think there might be. I want to hear the horse story.
Yeah, there's a story about the horse. In fact, this is just one of my many horses that I have, because I have a bunch of stuffed horses. And the thing is, the horse is like my animal, you know, whereas some people are cat people, some people are dog people, some people are real pig people. Yeah, I'm just the horse person, and the horse is like one of my favorite animals of all time, and it as well as the other herbivore animals. I particularly like horses and cows and those you know, hippos, rhinos, those other large herbivore animals that demonstrate, because they eat only plants, and they're some of the strongest animals around, you know. And there's just something about horses that has always fascinated me. And so as a result, I've just kind of collected a bunch of stuffed horses. Got this one for $4 at a thrift store. And so it's just kind of like my symbol, just because about horses, how they're just so peaceful and playful, and they just eat their grass and whatever other things that humans will feed them. You know, they're just nice. So yeah, sometimes I bring out my horse Brownie.
They are extraordinary beings, and my first teacher, my first non-human teacher, was a horse. And in fact, someone was asking me the other day is when I became vegan, and it wasn't really when I actually, you know, stopped eating all animal products. It was when I was about 13 years old, and at that point, my beloved horse person, had come to me. And I felt under very magical circumstances. And so we had an opportunity to relate and, you know, experience life together. And at a certain point, I had this dream. And it was kind of a dark dream. I was wandering around trying to find my beloved horse. And I was looking everywhere and couldn't find her. And then I came across this huge cauldron, and in this cauldron I looked into it, and it was full of her body parts, and her head was bobbing up and down in the cauldron. And I think that was the moment I became vegan. That was the moment when I realized that was being done, not just that it was horrible to think of her being turned into food, just as it was horrible to think of other animals being turned into food. And that's you know, stayed with me my entire life as a teaching dream, to really remind me of that ethical issue.
Paulfo's messaging me on Facebook. For some reason, he hasn't joined our hangout yet. Not sure what's up with that.
That's a powerful dream, Alice.
Very. Yes.
That's power. That's powerful.
It really spoke to me.
Yeah.
It spoke to me.
Yeah.
And I remembered it my entire life. And it, you know, every stage in my life when I went through the decision-making process of, you know, vegetarian to vegan, that dream was what really motivated me, I think. It just showed me in images. It spoke to my right brain. It showed me in images as to what was wrong with the whole issue of eating animals. And I felt it very viscerally, and I never forgot it. I'm really glad I still remember it after all these years.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't know that I can say that I've had specific dreams about veganism. I've had profound dreams about other things. But as I mentioned in my post from yesterday, when I was in Iceland this last spring, we went 2 years in a row. The first year we went as tourists, and the second year we ended up staying at the northernmost vegan and raw food restaurant in the world. It's a restaurant and inn in just outside Akureyri called Silva. And we met the owner, and when she found out that my husband makes tofu from scratch, she didn't know how to do it, so she invited him back to do a work share in her kitchen for a week. So Sean, who is a hobbyist cook, we went back this last spring and spent 10 days outside Akureyri at this guest house, and which culminated in him teaching a tofu making class to Icelanders. And while I was there, I was making a decision about whether or not I wanted to study paganism as an ethnographer or animal rights as an ethnographer. And I went to Ásbyrgi Canyon, which is the big horseshoe-shaped canyon in northern Iceland. It's an extremely powerful place for me. And I think it's just an extremely powerful place. And I was moved while there to promise the earth that I would use my degree to make the lives of my fellow beings a better place. And so I had something of a spontaneous, it wasn't spontaneous, I had planned it in advance, but the direction of the ceremony was more spontaneous. And I came away from it feeling as though I'd made a holy vow, if that makes sense. And, well, there you have it. It's not a dream, but it was ceremonial.
Well, it was an expression of your sincere commitment.
It is an expression of my sincere commitment. Mm-hmm. It was. When I'm done, and I'm finished with my dissertation, I'm going to go read the introduction to the stones. And that will be the completion of my vow.
You're going to read the introductions to which stones?
The stones of the canyon.
Okay, okay. I didn't think you meant the Rolling Stones. I was.
No. No. Yes, I'm going to make the Rolling Stones listen to the introduction to my dissertation about vegan animal rights activists.
Because reason.
I don't think reasons. After Goat's Head Soup, I don't think they'll listen.
Right. Maybe they're the folks we can't reach.
I wondered whether their album cover had influenced my dream. You know.
No, I tend to be. I'm definitely pan-polytheistic, and I'm very ritually focused, and so that was sort of a transitional point in my life that was marked in that way. It's something that I hold very dear.
Polypantheistic?
Pan-polytheistic.
Pan-polytheistic?
Mm-hmm.
All many gods.
All things are sacred and many gods. So I'm pantheistic in the way that you might understand me to be pantheistic, but I'm also polytheistic. But see, here's the thing about being polytheistic. So I'm really okay if I'm only expressing my own inner truth in polytheism. I'm really okay if that's just an expression of my own inner wisdom or my own higher wisdom. I'm also okay if there's a room out there in the universe somewhere populated with divine beings. Either way, it's the window shades through which I view the universe.
So you're ambivalent between those two options?
I'm really okay either way because...
Or a mixture, even.
Yeah. What's resulting from it is that I'm living the best life I can. That I'm living the most moral life I can. That I'm living the most ethical life I can. And that all of the symbols and all of the rituals and all of the understandings that I cultivate as a pan-polytheist are cultivated with that life in mind. So whether it's, whether I go to my grave and go to dust and feed the soil, or there's something else out there, I'm still doing what I need to do,
How's it going,
Hey.
guys?
I
Hey,
think what
Papa,
really
Papa joined
distinguishes it is your commitment to being an ethical person, and whether you're a theist, a pagan, an atheist, the commitment to being a moral and ethical person is an independent decision.
Let's get some introductions. And I see Alice, Chandler. I think that's Sean. Is that Sean? Yep. And my friend Lucy has just joined us. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you good.
And who's that's been speaking for a while?
I,
CS?
Oh, Kelly. Yes, I'm Kelly.
We've never actually officially met, so nice to meet you. I was listening in for a little while there.
yeah, we're just talking about a little bit of everything, just jumping around to every subject, and I found the part interesting about like responding to people who use religion as a defense for killing animals, basically.
Yeah. The sacrifices and like kind of all that reconstructionalist approach. Yeah, I think what you guys were talking about, I think you said it all. You were talking about polytheism for a little while. Like in Biopan, it's more of it's not hard theism, but it's more like embracing and understanding the symbolism and the metaphor involved and stuff. Like I have a plaque of Cernunnos, the horn god, on my wall. I don't believe that there's a literal entity out there with stag antlers, but he represents something to me. He's like the green man. The same concept, the personification, the embodiment of nature. And I think that symbols and rituals and all these things are powerful. The problem is when people take them too literally, and the rituals and the metaphors and the motifs sort of overshadow everything else. And as in like ancient times in antiquity, people end up worshiping and trying to placate the gods and believing that nature spirits are all around us and can intervene and stuff like that. And I think that just comes down to a lack of understanding of how nature works. And without the benefit of science and scientific knowledge, they mystified everything and incorporated all these superstitions, and it's persisted till today, obviously. Do you want to? Who else was? Did we lose Lucy? Looks like she dropped off.
Yeah. Someone named Vegan Extremist keeps joining and leaving. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Isn't that one woman with the YouTube channel that I was watching?
That's her.
Yeah, where she has where it had the colors toned down so it looks like it's grayscale and all that. That's cool.
Yeah, she does. She has some great content. She makes great videos. We've never actually conversed or had like an online chat or anything, so I thought this could be a good opportunity for that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I was bogged down with trying to respond to these people. It says she's having trouble with her microphone. You can type your text, and we can probably get it in the messages.
Yeah, that's true. If she wants to say anything, yeah, we can read it off. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that I was tied up on that thread where people are bashing me for being misanthropic, and because I reposted that post by George Martin that was saying how human babies are stupid and all that stuff. So
I just read that. I seriously just read that one.
Half the people were triggered, and the other half was like, yeah, it's true. It's humans are helpless, and babies are born and they're completely ignorant. And the whole point of that was to say, so why is it always the go-to justification when people are consuming dead animal parts, and they say, oh well, they're not smart, they're not as smart as us, they're ignorant, because human babies are just as ignorant. So no one uses that as justification for child abuse or genocide or anything.
See, that's
the point. But
I got the point of your post because I just read that and I totally get it. Because all of the justifications people try to use for killing the animals or whatever would equally apply to the human babies because they're ignorant or because they don't have the same abilities as adults or whatever. So I saw your logic. You weren't trying to diss babies and just talk about how
it wasn't even about. Yeah, I mean that was the first sentence, and people completely misunderstood, and it was misconstrued that because it's a triggering statement. It says human infants are the stupidest beings on the planet. And it's like, well, yeah, it's true. Like all babies are stupid and innocent until they're educated, until they learn, their fine motor skills and stuff like that. But that was literally just the opening statement to get to a greater point. But I got this guy, John Sawyer, who's basically complaining and saying that I'm just this egotistical egomaniac that's like it's all about me, and then somehow he throws in there that I'm chauvinistic and all this other stuff. Hey, Lucy.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm chauvinistic?
Yeah, we still can't hear, but we can see her now.
Looks like her microphone is just turned off. Like maybe we can just switch it so that it's on.
I don't know
Lucy, yes, you have to turn the button at the top.
There's a red microphone at the top. If you hover the screen,
yes,
right
scroll
up there next
up.
to your camera.
I mean, hover over the little icons at the top, and there's like microphone, camera.
When you hover it, it should say unmute microphone.
It's still muted.
Huh. Yeah, who knows what's going on there. Sometimes
we'll tell you when the icon goes away, okay? We'll watch it for you.
Yeah. But yeah, see, that's the thing, like what you were just saying, Pafo, the accusations people make against you, and it's like, it's just so sad. Because people will always misunderstand. That's what I'm learning. First of all, no matter how well something is communicated, somebody's always going to misunderstand. And people think things of me that aren't right too. But yeah, I got the point of your post, but some people are just so reactionary. They just see the first sentence and they never read the rest of the post and never get the point.
Well, I think perhaps Papa is looking at it from a bigger perspective. A lot of humans aren't able to look at things from outside of the perspective of their own species. If you are used to pantheistic thinking, you can think outside your own species. You can project, or empathize with another creature. You can sort of turn the tables and look back at your own species and say, well, children are pretty stupid. They're pretty helpless compared to, say, horses or goats or dogs or any other creature. They go through a prolonged helpless and non-communicative period. And so, an objective person who wasn't too invested in their own species could very easily, be okay with that.
And that's the point I was trying to make. I feel like that your attitude is a little bit speciesistic. You're so easily offended because someone's talking crap about the human race, but the human race is probably the worst thing that's ever happened on this planet. And that, like, if you don't realize that, then you just haven't studied history and you're not following along. But the way you described it, that's perfect. The way you described it, Alice, it's exactly right.
Or ecology, I think, because it's not just about history; it's about ecology.
Mm-hmm.
How we are relative to this planet compared. We have overpopulated the planet. We've gone way outside of our biological niche, both dietary-wise and behavior-wise.
I don't necessarily think that it's a space and population problem. It's because human beings have such an influence, and we can be so destructive in the acquiring of the resources. That's what causes it. But there's enough space for everyone that exists right now. It's just that we're all overpopulated in these tight little areas and cities and stuff. And of course, because we have the technology, because we have the means to literally rape the earth, that's the problem. Is that it's not only that there's too many of us, it's that we're too smart. We're too smart for our own good. We're highly evolved and advanced in certain ways, and in other ways, in terms of our ethics and our morality, we're way back here. We're so far behind. We're not living in homeostasis with the rest of the ecosystems.
I think our empathetic, for the most part, not everybody, of course, present company most likely excluded, but I think as a species, we lack empathy. And I think that's a major element in which we are completely retarded as a species. If we're not able to see empathetically and relate empathetically to other beings, and we're not even able to communicate with them telepathically as they communicate with each other, we are in a deficit situation. And
well, you believe that animals Non-human animals can communicate telepathically?
Oh, absolutely. They have no communication issues. Their sounds that they make are attention-getting sounds, like "Hey,
more subtle.
I'm going to talk to you." "Hey, I'm going to talk to you," and then they think to you. And you can test this out with your own animal friends to see whether they're understanding your communications.
Well, definitely body language, pheromones, body language. There's all these subtle cues that.
And beyond that, I've seen
the way that animals speak
about inaudible sounds humans cannot hear, but the other animals can. Like there was this video I saw. I think my mom checked it out from the library about elephants, how they can communicate with each other with this low rumble sound, a low frequency sound that machines can pick up, but that human ears can't. And that was really cool.
Well, I think we need to focus less on animals as having their sounds being elements of speech, and more as that they are elements of attention getting, that they get attention, because in order to be telepathic with someone else, you kind of have to be focused on them. My view of telepathy and my experience of telepathy is that when I'm closely focused on another person, I can be telepathic. But when I'm, focused on other things, that telepathic connection is lost. So the sounds that they make are attention getting, like "Hey, I'm gonna communicate with you" sort of sounds, like "Hey." To us, that doesn't really communicate much. It just gets attention. Well, their sounds are very similar to that too, like "Hey" or "Watch out" or things like that. They're not intended to be a full communicative speech. But humans, because of either the way we were evolved or perhaps the way we were designed, we have largely lost that ability, and it requires practice and effort, and even probably a little bit of belief to understand that it is possible.
Yeah, I've said this many times that we've gotten lost in the abstract, in the semantics and the syntax and the verbal expression, and that literally sort of overshadows everything else. Whereas most other species on this planet definitely communicate through body language and stuff like that, and all these other means. Like, we have gone so far into the intellectual, into the pseudo-intellectual, into constructs and concepts and themes and ideas and language. Language,
and that's our weakness.
Yeah, it's helped us to connect, but it also separates us.
And different languages too. Like, you've never seen a dog that can't communicate with another dog. But there's plenty of people that can't communicate with each other. You see, for one species to not be able to communicate with other members of its species, that is completely unknown in nature.
I think it's a product of our high state of evolution, though, because that is exactly what's necessary, in some ways, and in order to advance and be the most influential species on the planet. But then at the same time, as we said, that our ethics and our morality are, our sympathetic neurons are not always in play. Like, we're not.
Yeah, now we hear you.
Okay, I tried it on my phone, and that seems to do the job. I don't know what's going on with my mic.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Sorry about all that.
No problem.
Love your videos.
You see what I'm saying, though, Alice? About she makes great videos, great content. What I'm saying about the inconsistency of human beings, how it's the fact that we are so highly evolved and advanced in some ways, and in other ways we're so primitive. We, like Christopher Hitchens says, our adrenal glands are too big, our frontal lobe is too small. We're very reactionary. We're still primates. We and it shows. We act very aggressive and dominating and competitive, and all these aspects of the reptile brain. Which should have been subdued, or at least, sort of balanced out, and there's no balance there.
Well, here's a way of putting it. Of course, not everybody will get this unless they have some experience with computer programming. But it's about the concept, like in programming, they have what are called high or low level languages, and the low level languages are closer to the hardware, like assembly, machine code, that kind of stuff. And then it gets to slightly above that C, and then C++, Java, stuff like that. And the higher level languages are the ones that are abstractified. They're all abstract and meant to be more human friendly. And the more human friendly a programming language is, the further away it is from the actual hardware of the computer and the less efficient it is. And I feel that other animals are like, they work on a very efficient system in the way they communicate and the way they think. The fact that they don't have that additional burden of having this huge vocabulary of English or French or Spanish words and arguing over terms like of what political party you are or what religion you are, all these stupid labels. Other animals, they don't have to worry about that crap, and that's why they get along more.
They get along or they kill each other.
They still argue, believe me.
More straightforward. Let's just say it's more straightforward.
But they argue about things like territory and mating rights and things like, food and things like that. So there's definitely arguments, but their arguments are based on needs.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is where humans really deviate from the other species on the planet, is because they're very want focused, very desire focused, and not so need focused. And this causes us to expand beyond our boundaries of constructive relation with other beings.
I agree. Wouldn't you say that it's also because of our capacity to think, to ruminate, to ponder, to look at backwards in hindsight, and to look ahead, to have forethought? It's because we're so focused on the future, or we're focused on the past, that we're not in the present moment. But that's what allows us to. See what I'm trying to say is to plan ahead. To we go further than other species in that we're not just living in the moment. We're actually there's premeditation involved.
I think one has to question, though, whether it's a good thing to live outside the present. Most of the spiritual practice I've done has been getting people to come back to the present and realize that in the present, nothing is really problematic. All that things you're worrying about, all that past trauma, nothing of that is real. What is real is what is right here, right now. And I'm talking to a bunch of highly intelligent people on a voice chat. So I think that coming back to the present, nothing is really ever wrong in the present. Every so often there's a trauma, but then it goes away.
But that's due to our privileged place as human beings. There's definitely something wrong for male chicks that are born on this earth. There's definitely something wrong for cows and calves and pigs that are born. If they're living the present moment, their reality is hell. So like what you're talking about is for human beings, specifically for human beings who.
I'm talking about any individual. Any individual, it would have the same experience of their own. What is going on around them. So, for the chick, things may be perfectly fine when they're born, but when they're ground up into mush, by a grinding machine, things are no longer okay. Obviously there's issues depending on your individual perspective.
I think what Paffa was getting at, because the way I understand it, is the thing about humans is that we have a capacity to, for example, worry about something that's going to happen even years from now. And like, for example, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And it's a completely impractical, inefficient thing to be worrying about what's going to happen. Like, what if this happens, or what if something bad like this happens? And I have all these thoughts about, well, what if something goes wrong, and it would be nice to not even have that ability to think ahead in that manner. Because I can't do anything about it.
So sorry to interject. Kelly and I are going to go ahead and ditch. We have to. It's late for us here. We're an hour ahead of Eastern time, and so we're going to ditch. We wanted to. Got to medicate the cat and take care of things. Yes, thank you all. You're wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll be back another time.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, you guys. Take care and have a great night. I'm going to hit the sack.
Good night.
Great chatting. For those who just joined, I linked their website again, veganfallacyis.com. An excellent website if you're looking to make specific arguments counteracting vegan, non-vegan fallacies or fallacies about veganism.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with that website.
Yeah.
I plan on using it extensively. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, it's like that's what I could do is next time I see somebody making some dumb excuse, I'll just go to that website, find the one on that page that matches the one they just said, and link them to the response to that.
Oh yeah, the efficiency is remarkable. I can see it being very useful.
I even spoke to somebody who said that he had like a flow chart for like how the argument tends to progress.
Right. Well, this is kind of that way. Have you been to the site yet? It just has a bunch of little boxes. You click on the box, the lion fallacy or whatever fallacy, the religion fallacy, and then it gives you the argument and easy to link it. Just toss it in the, I don't know. It would just help a lot, I think, when you're doing counteracting ignorance. Afo, I think your mic is off.
How long has my mic been off?
Oh yeah, that is weird because your mic was.
I described the mysteries of the universe, and you guys missed it.
I
explained it all.
Oh no!
I don't know how long I've been talking. All I was trying to say was, we experienced it yesterday in Big Pan. Lucy, read some of the ridiculous asinine comments, and there is there's a trend. There's a chronology of how they go right to the first. It's the appeal to nature, appeal to tradition, appeal to history. Then it's the plant have feelings to
and not
to
knowing anything about biology.
What's that?
And not knowing anything about how B12 works.
Oh yeah, the misinformation. Yeah, that's always abundant. But it does seem like there's this continuous pattern of how carnists and non-vegans will speak. It's literally programming that they're just regurgitating, back to us.
Interesting. I think that's worth an article talking about the levels of carnist programming and what the different elements of it are, and then counteracting each element with a concise argument.
It's little wonder that I came to understand that the deterministic nature of human beings, the fact that how predictable people really are, because we don't hear anything new. There hasn't been a new carnist excuse in a long time. It's the same old stuff that people have been already came up with responses to long ago. But each new person, when exposed to the reality of things, then they come up with all these same excuses they've heard from other people. And so we don't, all the information, all the responses are already out there.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's it's completely discouraging at the same time, because I deal with it every day. It's so redundant. It's so incessant. I was fascinated by the psychology of it for a while. It's why do people keep repeating the same things? Is this literally taught in schools? Some of it is.
It's taught in schools.
My parents taught me some stupid bullshit.
Parents teach it, and it is it's part of the culture. It's part of the paradigm in which we live, the story in which we live, and in which everyone is told when they are young. And it takes a while to get past it. I think all of us are past it, but
they're all reading from the same script, and I just want to smash that script and write a new story.
You guys know about this creator on YouTube named Veganimation?
Not sure.
His stuff is really funny. You have to check it out.
Yeah?
Anyway, he did an animation of
maybe I've seen it, I'm not sure.
Maybe. He did an animation of a vegan sidekick comic and he has this German accent, so everything he says is kind of funny.
The stick figures came to life, stick figures.
My parents told me something when I was 5, and you cannot expect me to change my opinion now.
Yeah, share it with us after. Yeah. Check it out.
Or link it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody want to talk about misanthropy and antinatalism and
totally
euphilism, because that seems to be a recurring subject.
Theme of the day.
That's my theme for sure.
Oh yeah, mine too. It's and see, here's the thing. For example, most people wouldn't understand my position on this, because I would be completely fine if all sentient life ceased to exist entirely, so that there would be no potential for suffering. And yet, what I find is that I feel antinatalist most strongly about humans, just because of their great influence is why they can be the most damaging. Okay, so a chicken how much harm can a chicken itself do to another being?
Depends on the size of
or unless it's one of those chickens in the Zelda games, like the Zelda series of video games, where if somebody attacks a chicken, then an army of chickens comes and kills the player, which is kind of awesome.
Yes, I remember that.
Why can't they attack Ganondorf? Like, seriously. She knows what I'm talking about.
That would be so amazing.
That guy.
I think humans have been a little bit removed from karmic burdens that they should be bearing. I don't think there was a strong enough being on this planet, other than perhaps if there were deities that walked. There hasn't been a strong enough being to counteract our technological progress, and so we've been left to run unchecked and without suitable karmic retribution for our behavior. And other than what we impose upon ourselves through our conscience, I think we're running amok, and it is dangerous to the planet, to the ecosystems, to our fellow beings, and it's proven fact. And there shouldn't be one species responsible for the extinction of a whole host of others. This is wrong. And so we really need to rein ourselves in as a species. We need to see what the damage we are that is causing. We need to correct our behavior. We need to focus on what we need and not what we want. And we need to, eliminate over-competitive social structures in favor of cooperative social structures.
So it all sounds good. It sounds just like the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project, but like what you're talking about, I mean, it's occurring right now. Like I'm dealing with this war, this battle that's going on with this guy, and he's just slamming me like comment after comment.
Which quote is this? I mean, do we have the link?
John Sawyer. He's just messaging me. He's messaging me all this stuff.
What's his tenets? What is he?
I don't. I think he actually was a member of Biopam, but he's probably going to leave now because he thinks I'm just like this horrible person. But I could read you his comments, but that would be kind of like a violation. It's what I'm trying to say.
If they're public, it's different. If they're private, I can understand.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that why do human beings fight? Why are we at odds with each other to begin with? That's the point. Is like we're all working from different sets of information, right? So like I'm trying to express and promote my ideals and whatever's important to me, and someone else is doing the exact same thing, but they've been exposed to a different set of information. They also have the same universal, ubiquitous, doubts and fears and insecurities that I do, but we're just trying to meet our needs in different ways, and we're seeing each other as enemies of your personal fulfillment and happiness. So I mean, on a basic level, we're just seeking happiness, fulfillment, peace, security, and we're all just going about it in all kinds of different ways, and that's what's creating the chaos and all the stratification and discord. I try to make things as simple as possible. That like he thinks that I'm not taking the conversation seriously. I'm trying to tell him I'm in the middle of like a podcast, a group call, group hangout, and like he's not getting that message. And I even said we can resume this some other time. I don't mind talking to you about this later. But like, and he's like, so you think you're too, you're so important, you're so special that I'm not. You're too busy for me. You're too, so everything is misconstrued. I think it's a problem with language.
Not everyone you meet on the internet is sane.
I know that.
And it sounds as though he's taken a little too much coffee or some other type of stimulant and is just being overly pushy. Just to, take a step back. It's your space. You can decide whether to respond or not.
Yeah, I have no problems, responding, but my problem is prioritizing who I should engage with and who I should, avoid and disregard. I kind of have trouble turning off the filter, so to speak. I get wrapped up in things that just take hours and hours and hours, and then it's just fruitless. It ends up going nowhere.
Do you want to know my guideline? My guideline is respect. If I'm getting respect from the other parties, I continue to engage. If I'm not, I leave.
Well, I wouldn't talk to anybody then.
Well, you give respect, you get respect. Are you having is there name calling going on? That's a sign of disrespect. Is there, are people addressing are people criticizing you as an individual rather than addressing your points? Basically, if you were facing someone in debate, at what point would you walk away from the debate? You walk away when it becomes an ad hominem attack. You walk away. Yeah, go ahead.
That's looking at it from a totally different perspective, because that's not why I engage with people. Like, I do it for the sake of the readers, the viewers or the readers or whoever is going to come along later and be educated by the exchange. I hardly ever am really trying to convert or convince the person I'm talking to, because I can already see it's a lost cause. So it's different for me, because I'm not basing it on who's being respectful with me or not and who is actually worth my time. I'm doing it for the sake of the animals, for the sake of all the other Facebook users who are going to come along and read it. And that's how I influence people, because they come back and then they start commenting and they learn from my responses. So it's different. It's a little bit more difficult for me to kind of draw those lines, like you're saying.
Right. I suppose that the difference would be, is it a personal conversation where just a few people participating, or a very public conversation? If it's a very public conversation, that's a different thing. You're writing for the animals. You're writing to defend the voiceless. On the other hand, if it's just a kind of a one-on-one or a private message thing, I look for respect or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. Or if it's like face to face or in real life, in person, definitely.
Well, you don't want anyone getting angry and hitting you. So you have to tone things down in person. And I personally, I keep them pretty toned down in any kind of public forum.
Yeah, I've had very few, real physical confrontations doing AV, doing outreach. I mean, people are generally, they're all just pseudo intellectuals. They just want to argue and debate. Like, they're not really like threatening. So some people are unstable. They're crazy. They're homeless. They're out of their minds. They're on drugs. And I just try to avoid those people, or I'm usually trying to protect the cubers from being assaulted or for them invading their personal space. But generally, most people in civilized society are not a real threat. They're just intellectually trying to one up you.
Right. There's that too.
I didn't actually, in my couple of times doing the cube, and I've only done it twice, I only encountered like one person out of maybe 10 who was confrontational.
Who was what?
Confrontational, like wanted to argue.
Yeah.
Like, everybody else kind of accepted, like, yeah, this is bad.
I've had people come up to me at demonstrations, like at the fur demonstration in San Francisco, anti-fur. I had someone come up to me, and she was, very odd. She had like weird things in her hair, and all different colors, and she was trying to argue how humane meat was great, and and like that I was very extreme in being a vegan, and I was just trying to get her to see the point that for me, I'm not ethical unless I'm vegan. And for me, being ethical is really important. That's where I want to be. And so for me, it's kind of the lowest I'll go. I won't go below that. Now that I know that it's possible, I'm not going below it. And,
The veganism, animal rights activism is the moral baseline that we need to stop the abuse and the cruelty and the violence. I thought this yesterday. I was like, I'm watching all this footage. Actually, I was looking up photos of baby chicks to use for that post. And I'm like, all I have to do is show people photos of baby chicks, baby chickens, photos of baby piglets or video footage of baby piglets and cute, lovable baby calves, and then show them footage of what is done to calves and chicks and piglets in animal agriculture. That's it. I don't even have to explain anything. Just show them, because first of all, they're gonna.
You could do you could say before and after or something.
Yeah, they're gonna emote. They're gonna emote, and they're gonna immediately gush and be like, "Oh, it's so adorable! It's so cute! Oh my god!" And that's exactly our natural response, is what it should be. And then when they see that, they're going to be appalled and shocked, and they're going to go through all these. I watched like all this psychological gymnastics, and it's like, well, that can't be happening everywhere. That's just an isolated incident. You're just showing the worst of the worst, and until they finally accept it, that this is standard practice everywhere. So the point I'm trying to say is, all we have to do is literally show people the truth, show them the reality of what's taking place, and use by comparison use the contrast, because most people, if I hold a little baby duckling over a blender, people are gonna like freak out. They're gonna like tackle me and try to stop me. But that happens like times 10 squared, in the egg industry. That's like baby male chicks are ground up alive every second, like something like 4,000 every second. It's insane. But no one knows this. All they need to do is reconnect with the core values, with the feelings of empathy and compassion and mercy that they generally possess. Most people, anyway, barring sociopaths and psychopaths and stuff. Most people have that. So we just have to connect the dots and show them, no, this is actually taking place, and this is where your eggs come from, and this is where bacon comes from. Like these are the consequences of buying these products. These are dead animal parts. So there's no intellectual conversation that needs to happen. There just needs to be an exposure to the reality of what's taking place, to the truth. Because intellectualism and conversations, debate, that takes you further and further and further away from the truth of where they really need to be. It's just like a visceral response to the atrocity that's occurring.
Well, exposure to reality is super important. The fact that when people actually see what is going on in the farms, and they get beyond those idyllic scenes of cows munching away in fields, or chickens pecking, on the grass, and things that are just not happening in reality when it comes to factory farming, they realize that what's going on is wrong. They have a harder time thinking that the animals just have one bad day. They find it much easier to think, oh, well, they had a nice life. The farmer took care of them. The farmer fed them, and they, pecked along in the grass, and then they had one bad day. That for some reason is okay, even though, of course, ethically it's problematic. But then the idea that they're confined their entire life, or that, have you ever thought that male chickens don't give eggs? Have you ever thought that male cows don't give milk? So what do you think happens with all those male chickens and those male cows? What do you think happens? And that's an important thing for people to get as well, especially the vegetarians, because vegetarians say, well, I'm not really taking any lives, I'm just, the animals are, I hopefully get them from a humane source. And I'm like, well, what happens to the animals after they stop giving milk or laying eggs? What happens to the males of the species, when they're born?
The greater point of it all is it's all unnecessary. It's all unnecessary. Absolutely. It's not like, why would we try to appeal to the idea of humane farms, grass-fed, free-range, all this crap, when none of it's necessary in the first place? We have plant-based alternatives. All these plant-based alternatives, there is no biological need for human beings to be consuming meat, eggs, and dairy, and at this time.
Aside from the fact that there's no need for it, there's another level that I thought about. Consider if you're one of those people who you'll eat meat or dairy, but from so-called humane sources. Well, there's a problem, because it's actually harder to live that way than it is to be vegan, because that means that every animal product you buy, you have to investigate and find out which farm that came. You have to find where it came from. You have to find out how the slaughter in that place happens. You have to find out about all.
It's just a verbal argument.
And my argument is that the word humane means kind. Means kind, and there is no kindness in slaughter. You cannot have a humanely killed animal. It is impossible. It is absolutely a lie, just in terms of the definition of the word.
It's only due. We only make this allowance due to the myth that it's necessary, that we need it for protein, that we need it for calcium. So you dispel that myth. You just abolish that myth right there, and then the humane thing goes out the window. It's like, why are we doing it at all? Like we're not living in the Paleolithic era. We're not Native Americans, at the turn of the century. We're not, the Inuit Eskimos or Aborigines. Like, we're not even talking to them. Like, those people in inhospitable climates, in environments where they can't grow vegetation, then they have to survive. They're on a more primitive level. This is not racism or whatever, but they're on a more primitive level on the evolutionary kind of ladder in terms of ethical evolution, in terms of moral evolution. They're more like primitive animals who are doing what they need to do to survive. We've advanced in Western culture, and we have all all of this abundance to fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and plants. So there's no reason for it.
Here's the funny part about it is, okay, so the Eskimos, for example, they're never the ones talking to us. We're never talking to Eskimos. They don't. I'm pretty sure out where they're at, they don't even have internet, so they're not hearing us anyway.
Don't run into the grocery store.
What?
You don't run into Eskimos at the grocery store?
Nope. I've worked at that grocery store for over 5 years, and I've never seen an Eskimo.
A fact here, like, as a side note, they have one of the shortest lifespans of any culture.
Makes sense
because of all the fat, because of the high,
yeah.
the heavy meat diet. Yeah, but
it's funny that it's always other people who are not Eskimos start trying to justify people in these developed countries that we live in eating meat because Eskimos do it. Like,
because it's an excuse, Chandler. Because it's just an excuse. It's not. We're wasting time talking about it right now. It's not even a. It's not even a point. It's literally just what pops in their head. It's an excuse. That's all.
I know, but I'm just mentioning it because it's absolutely hilarious how stupid it is.
No question about that. But I think that Pafo brings up a really good point, which is that the key element is the necessity argument. The necessity argument. If you go right to immediately to the heart of the whole thing, and you pull the rug out under everything else, that is the necessity argument. Because that's what really got me into first vegetarianism and then later into veganism, was when the necessity was pulled out from under me, I naturally went to where I should be. The necessity to eat meat was pulled out. I went to vegetarianism. The necessity to eat eggs and dairy, I went vegan. So, for me, that was all it took. And I think that's true with a lot of people. What I do is I start with the humans are physiologically vegan. That's my first argument, because that pulls that rug out of the necessity issue. And if they want to argue with me on that, well, I have a whole series of facts that I can use to support that point of view. And then I don't have to argue about all the other waste of time facts.
It's exactly my approach. I mean, it's not normal, natural, or necessary. And
Gotcha.
Physiologically, we are naturally frugivores. Closer to herbivores than anything else. Definitely not carnivores. I'd say human beings are opportunistic omnivores. We eat whatever we can find. But since we are living in a modern society with all these technological advances and access to so much abundance of food since the agrarian revolution, there's just no excuse. There's no reason. Like, we're still thinking of ourselves as cavemen. We're thinking of ourselves as primitives. And yet we're so far advanced beyond that. But there is this tendency to want to cling to something that's primal and primitive, and even more masculine than just eating plants. Like, even though, like, a gorilla will kick your ass and he's 100% vegetarian.
They eat insects.
What's that?
They eat insects.
Sure, they eat a small
yes.
percentage of insects, and they feed on their own. And they feed on their own kind at times. They cannibalize their young. But we're talking about wild animals. Why are we comparing ourselves to wild animals who've never developed the moral reasoning capacities that we possess right now? That's
I think that they can teach us. What I try to do is look at nature as my educator. And so, for what they've taught me is that they can they survive in a wild environment on a certain nutritional profile. That they can easily catch bugs, which is why they eat a small amount of bugs. But these days, personally, I don't feel like eating bugs. I don't know about you guys, but bugs just no. So
Peter wants people to eat bugs. Peter's constantly telling people we need to eat more insects.
That's more viable
predations.
A few legumes and a B12 supplement, I'm set. Okay, I don't need the bugs. Thank you. But hey, if you want to do it really naturally, go for the bugs. I actually find it really interesting that humans have very little compunction about killing a bug. It's like they won't want to kill a pig, they won't want to kill a sheep, they won't want to kill a horse, but a bug, it's flat.
Chandler and I and many others aren't like that. Like, we'll take them outside and we don't kill spiders, we don't kill.
I don't either.
I'll just catch
I don't either.
them.
I find most humans, when I even say that I take a spider outside, they're like, "What? Why would you do that?" But if I said I would, I would preserve the life of a sheep, they'd be, oh, okay, great. It's like there's something about bugs. Humans seem more adapted to killing than other creatures. So
that has to do. There's a couple reasons for that, Alice. I would say that has to do with proximity. That it has to do with our size, with because it's so easy to kill bugs, because they could tend to present a nuisance, and in terms of hygiene and things like that, and because we have a natural sort of repulsion to insects and things, probably sort of biologically, instinctively, we know that if there's a lot of bugs around something, that means something's rotting, that means something is infected, that there's the process of decomposition is taking place. So we're hardwired to be grossed out by those things. But then
I think so that you mentioned natural.
Yeah.
And I think there is something really natural about the way that humans relate to bugs. And it's not that they don't relate to higher animals. So, I really do think that there's something to that. And like, for instance, you look at the way a cat approaches a mouse. That cat doesn't have any problem with killing the mouse. Doesn't have any problem playing with the mouse and doing various other unpleasant things, biting the mouse's head off. It really doesn't have any problem. There's no conscience element that would prevent that cat from doing that, because that cat is preying on their appropriate prey.
It's dependent. It's dependent on that protein source. That's
its
food.
You see this throughout nature. You see that the conscience will act where it's not appropriate, and the conscience will not act where it is appropriate.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because, well, when you look at it, yeah, sure, a lot of humans will squash a bug, but at the same time, a lot of those humans also being carnists who do kill the larger mammals at the same time. And of course, as Pafo mentioned, like I personally, like I am also one of those people who will take spiders out of the house, and I act like I'm like really scared the whole time too, because they do creep me out. So here's what happens. Here's how it usually goes. Okay, so there's a spider, and I open the door, and then I try to get it to walk onto a broom. So when the spider finally walks in the broom, then basically I put the broom outside and I fling the spider as far away as I can, then bring the broom back in.
And you probably killed it in the process.
I know. That's the sad part, is because it just got flung a far distance. It probably died anyway.
All you have to do, Chandler, just like the only spider that you need to worry about is like a brown or a black widow or a brown recluse. And literally, like, you could just take a cup and a little card and a little like postcard and like that and scoop it up. And I catch bees in my hands. Like, I've never been like stung or bitten by anything like my whole life. I mean, my cats always bite me, but that's because they don't know, they just play. But yeah. I've never been attacked by any animal or stung or anything, so I don't have that fear. And I was gonna say earlier that like some people, we've kind of like bypassed that natural repulsion instinct. Like, I like snakes and I like bats and I like creepy things. And the other night I had this really intense, almost like spiritual experience where I was out by this pond and there were bats flying all around me. It was so cool. I could see them using the echolocation, using their sonar, and you can't hear them, but like you just see them kind of dive bombing in there, grabbing all the insects like right at sunset. And like, I love like all animals. Like, there's no animal that creeps me out or grosses me out, except maybe maggots. But I mean, I'm not afraid of them. I'm just grossed out by them because the way they bother me.
Yeah, well,
the fact that they feed on death is something. So.
Yeah, I've got some weird aversions there because I had some bad experiences with rotting things. So the visual of maggots, but I don't have any animosity towards them, not even towards like ticks or fleas or mosquitoes. Like they're just other animals doing their job, just doing what they need to do to survive.
It's weird because, like, okay, for example, there was this like mosquito. One time I came home and I was eating it, and there was this mosquito sucking blood out of my arm, and I could just see it right there, and I just left it alone because that's
not
the
many
thing.
People would do that.
If you do kill it, if you do swat at it for one thing, then it'll just barf its poison into your skin anyway. So I just left it alone until it had its fill, and then like I didn't even feel it. It went out, and who knows where it went after that. But it's like, okay.
So before anyone thinks that we're like Jainists, you know, like obviously
Well, I
the,
am,
o-
but-
the only the only justification for killing an animal, there's three justifications. One is self-defense, and in that case, I would say it's not wrong to kill an animal that's trying to feed on you. So self-defense, accidentally or unintentionally, and euthanasia, mercy killing. Those are the only three reasons that we ever would have to take the life or harm another life form.
And Papo, I disagree with the third one.
The third one,
Respect.
euthanasia,
Respect, yes,
mercy killing.
I do, and I'll tell you why. I have to say that if I were put into the position of another being, that if I were on my way out, I would wish to die consciously, and that I would not wish to be put to sleep or otherwise hastened in the process for any reason. That if I want to die, I will die. And I really don't think it's anybody else's business to impose that on me.
Well, we're not just talking about wild animals and stuff, but we're talking about like domesticated animals.
I'm saying exactly
companion
the same
animals
thing.
that if they're in an extraordinary amount of pain, then the compassionate thing to do, if all resources have been exhausted, you see what I'm saying, is to basically end their life. No,
and I'm saying no, because the compassionate thing to do is perhaps give them a painkiller.
It only helps so much.
It only helps so much, but you know, the point is that conscious death should not be assumed that it's only good for humans. I mean, we don't do this to humans, do we? We don't. We do that. We do it with their permission.
Dr. Gavorkian. I mean,
but he waits for permission, or we pull plugs of life support. Okay, those are acceptable things. But do we say, "Oh, that person's suffering, I'm just going to kill them"? And we don't do that, do we?
Right. Yeah, I see what she's saying here. I see what she's saying. That like there's a difference here because like with the humans, like, you know, people who are themselves stating that they want to die because they're in pain, that's different than when somebody just does it to an animal just because they see it suffering. Because it's different because the animals can't give like their informed consent for humans to do that to them. So
I'm not gonna argue or disagree with you, Alice, but I think what we're getting into is like this the philosophical notion. The even more intriguing aspect of this is what is our place? Like, how much do we intercede? How much do we allow? That's really the point you're kind of getting at. Is you watch these nature documentaries and stuff, and there's a little baby gazelle or something, and then the cheetah is about to rip it apart, and we're just like, oh god, we're like, no, we got to let nature do its thing. We have to. That's the cycle of life, you know, the law of nature. But yet, like, if the animal is in close relationship to us, if we have some kind of bond with it, then we would definitely protect it, and we would make sure that it has to do. It's a weird thing where we need to really decide what our place is as human beings, and how much we should intervene and how much we should step back and just allow the life cycles and so we have some friends who long term wish to end all suffering and death, even in the animal kingdom, and then we have other friends who think that death is not a bad thing, and death is a part of life, and there's this natural give and take, and everything balances out. So this is a whole separate subject actually that we could make a whole show out of, is the idea of what is our place and like philosophically and ethically and morally, who should we be saving and who should we let die? Because you could argue we should let mentally challenged people die, or we should let people who have handicaps and disabilities, just deal with it because that's nature's way. But yet we prolong their life, we extend their lives, we try to make their lives easier, and then we do the same in our own circles of compassion when it comes to domesticated animals, horses, dogs, cats, pets. But yet we let nature be nature and be vicious and cruel and carry on as it is. I mean, there's no equality in nature. I mean, it's completely, competitive and natural selection, competition, natural selection is taking place. So
see, some of these issues, these are sort of like the advanced topics that vegans, which of course vegans are already pretty much on the same page in most regards. It's only in certain issues like this. For example, like like you're saying, Paffa, how much we should interfere with nature or not. What is our place? And then not all vegans are anti-natalists and stuff like that. They disagree on other tangential issues, sort of, you know. But it is interesting to discuss. I mean, as long as people can do it without getting upset, then some of these things are interesting.
Yeah, because I see Alice's point, but I'm sure you guys can also see my point. If my cat is in an extraordinary amount of pain, I love him enough, and if there's nothing I can do, if there's nothing, you know, I've exhausted all resources, then that's what most people end up doing. I mean, my friend just put his cat to sleep because he was having like kidney stones and crystals in his bladder and stuff, and like he was in severe pain. So you don't agree with that. I can understand the principle, the ethic behind it, but also on a practical level, I would kill you, Chandler, if you were in an extraordinary amount of pain. If you were, and I couldn't help you.
If he asked you to, but would you kill him without him asking? And I think this is the whole question. And I've worked in a partly this, and I explained this early to Chandler, is that I've worked.
Yeah. I should respond to what Paffa just said though first.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, see, here's the deal, Paffa. I would totally get that. Now, assuming there was a situation.
You'd kill me too.
Okay. Yeah.
How sweet are you guys?
That's how we are,
Okay. So
you should watch the episode "To Be or Not to Be," where we actually delve into like whether we could, if we had the choice, whether we would choose to be born or not.
And we also had the conversation with Gaius, where I had to choose whether I would save a Paffa or a goat. It was really good. and the conclusion I came to was that if I saved Paffa, then in the long term I would save more goats. So that was how I reasoned it out. But
the utilitarian argument, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just to respond though, I had an experience when I was younger where I worked in a vet's office, and I saw person after person after person come in and say, "Kill my animal, please. Kill my animal, please. Kill my animal, please. Kill my animal, please," over and over again. And I just didn't feel that their justifications for killing their animals were valid.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but it's a different subject. It's a different subject. We're talking about whether humans should whether we should own animals or not, because most humans are irresponsible and they're not good caretakers.
Okay, well, there is the feeling of ownership, which I think is a huge error, and something that, and I think you'll see on my little image there, because the only life that belongs to me is my own. And that's another reason why I don't feel comfortable taking another life, is because what my experience is, and I have not practiced euthanasia with my companion animals, and I find that they do suffer, but their suffering is very short. That it is a short period of time, and I make them as comfortable as I possibly can, and they breathe heavily and they leave. And it's not something that really is that extended, because an animal tends to think a little differently to a human. Humans will hold on and they'll take painkillers and they'll want to grab onto the life because they don't believe anything comes afterwards. Mm-hmm. In many cases. For animals, I think it's different. It's different for them.
Animals will fight. They will fight with everything they have. That they have that survival instinct, but they don't have that fear. So that fear of what comes after, like you said, like that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier.
They go more easily. They don't need help, is my view. That after seeing them, being many animals euthanized, I really, and then deciding not to do that with my own companion animals, and just simply nursing them and letting them know that they were loved and helping them in their transition, their conscious transition, I felt that it was a better death. It was a higher death, and it was more of the type of death that I would personally want to go through. That even if I was suffering,
it's a valid point. I think it's probably contingent on the situation, on the individual situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and moreover, like Paffa was kind of mentioning earlier, like ideally someone can avoid that situation in the first place by never, quote unquote, owning the animal in the first place. So you never have to be at that position in your life where you whether you euthanize that animal or whether you watch them die otherwise. I mean, because either way is hard. you know. And
so we have this major problem with the idea of ownership. I heard you guys talking about this earlier, and just the idea that a living being, you know, can be considered property. I mean, that's the root of almost all discrimination and evil right there. Like to view another life form as inferior and deem them of lesser value. This is what causes problems in human relationships. This is what causes tremendous, you know, holocaust of animal agriculture that exists today, and all throughout history, ever since we've been able to dominate another species, another animal. You know, might makes right. It's that argument that, like, why have we not evolved to that level intellectually, ethically, where we say with great power comes great responsibility. We should be able to be merciful with the great power and the influence that we have, instead of lording it over other creatures. There's a major problem there, and it goes back to, I believe, it's the primate brain. It's just this warlike. I was watching footage of chimps. Chimps are incredibly violent, and how there was this the alpha male just dominating. He was just a bully, and he was just literally like beating up the females and the adolescents even for no good reason. And until he finally, I think he came down with sickness or something, and then the tribe actually flourished because there was a more personable and sociable ape that came into, you know, that took his place. So that's just whatever early hominid species we evolved from just had that in them, this kind of warlike, dominating inclination. And I wish there was a way to stamp it out, to quell it. And
most animals that live in groups, and humans are among them, tend to have structures of dominance. I certainly noticed that among dogs. I've noticed that among herds of cows, and so you see that in most family-oriented or, you know, tribe-oriented creatures. It's pretty
ducks and geese. You see how competitive
the so-called
the pecking order. Yeah, exactly.
It has to do with food. It has to do with reproduction. There's a lot of reasons why animals behave that way.
So if we have enough resources, if we have all the food that we need, and our needs are met, like in the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement, if our basic essential needs are met, and we're not having to struggle and fight and strive, and, you know, in a competitive sense, can we be more loving and tolerant and accepting of, you know, of the other?
Absolutely.
Like that.
Absolutely.
That's part of the problem, is that our society has kept us in this model of scarcity, where we are constantly like struggling and striving, like worrying and stressing for how we're going to make ends meet, and it causes competition and the devaluing of other beings, of other sentient beings, because we're trying to survive. We're looking out for our needs. We can all survive and flourish and coexist if it can just be recognized that the resources are available. They're already available. We don't have to go through, you know, utility companies and supply, you know, the chain of supply and demand and everything of corporations. It's just that those people, since early times, you know, 15,000 years, have been ruling and dominating, you know, lower classes and keeping themselves.
You know, there is one thing that I find highly disturbing, though. A sort of competition that goes on, and you guys were talking about this earlier in the animal kingdom, but it happens with humans very badly, is the whole mating thing. This whole with humans, you see this all the time. People, who they're dating, competing over who gets who as a boyfriend or girlfriend, all of that crap that goes on.
Jealousy.
Yeah, jealousy. Yeah. Because that's a type of scarcity. Once people are all fighting over which, of course, that sort of process is like ownership. It almost seems like they're
protective. It's like a protective ownership, kind of like. Yeah. Don't you look at my girl? I'll kick your ass.
I think it has to do with a certain, you know, realistic scarcity. I mean, there's only so many fertile wombs to go around, and if you have a drive to reproduce, then you want to, you know, find one that you can reproduce with. And you don't want to be raising somebody else's child either. So you want an exclusivity to that womb. So there's definitely politics to reproduction, and I don't think we can ignore that as
unless you're anti-natalist.
Unless you're anti-natalist.
No, but you're talking about the deeply programmed. Like this is our programming, our sort of prime directive, imperatives, biological imperatives. This gets into, like, we need to be able to move past it. We need to be able to acknowledge it, accept it, embrace that side of ourselves, but also recognize the modern society that we live in, the modern culture that we live in, that most women can take care of themselves and they don't need macho chauvinistic guy, always stepping up. Like, I've only been in maybe one or two situations where I've kind of had to, like, step in, where usually, they're self-sufficient. It's not like that. We live in a verbal society, and everything has more to do, like we were talking about earlier, with communication and stuff. That there doesn't need to get to that level of physical confrontation. Of course, this all depends on where you live in certain geographic locations, certain areas, really where crime is high, and in urban areas and things like that. You got to watch out you got to watch your back. You got to be constantly looking over your shoulder. So it all depends on. I'm speaking in general of modern civilized society in the West, like just Portland, Oregon, down in the Pearl District, or like Silver Lake in Los Angeles, like just where people are more conscious and evolved.
They're cool and conscious, and they just talk about things, and they don't fight.
Yeah. They talk too much.
Well, I think that's a whole interesting topic, the topic of reproduction and or non-reproduction, and how humans should go forward. I think that as our lifespans start to increase due to technological innovations, and possibly due to maybe even transhumanism, as we start to merge with machines and possibly extend our lives almost to the immortality point, how are we going to deal with reproduction? Obviously, things have to change. We cannot completely fill up the planet. And we're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to, find ways of coping with a population that doesn't die, or at least doesn't die.
Not if we're still quoting, "Be fruitful and multiply" from Genesis.
Right, of course. Now, I think the other important point has to do with what I call the human dietary conspiracy, which is, why is the government subsidizing something that causes a massive animal welfare problem and ethical issue, and causes people to die at about the age of 60 to 65. Okay, what is this? And why is that happening?
There might already be a depopulation program in place, is what you're saying.
Well, or at least let's depopulate before they start claiming retirement benefits. All right, so we get so many useful years out of them working for the system and paying taxes and that sort of thing, and then they die, and conveniently we no longer have to pay them benefits. So this is something that has to be taken account of in a vegan world, because people will be living longer. They'll be taking benefits for another 20 years or so, probably, as a result of their longer and healthier lives, lifespans.
If we maintain a holistic ethical philosophy that is all encompassing, where we recognize that we ought to be living in symbiotic relationship with our environment, then we're not going to have this, this struggle, this fight for self-preservation, and the egotism is not going to be there. Like if a vegan world, a vegan future, it's a culture of compassion and empathy and mutual respect, then we're going to recognize like our place in the grand scheme of things, so that we're not going to be clinging to the materialistic pursuits that is our right now. So it's a totally different paradigm, and it's odd because I'm thinking of how every topic we've discussed actually is related. It's interrelated, and even though it seems like we've been all over the place.
Well, I think the rise of machines and the rise of machines as being our new slave class will, to some extent, provide us with the freedom to move beyond the competitive model.
I was just thinking about that today.
And into the more, socially, balanced model where everybody has a basic income, or everybody, you know, maybe we don't even need money anymore, and there's a you know, system where people just get what they need.
Sure.
And then we can start to
resource-based
resource
economy.
based.
You're talking about automating everything so that exactly like the machines. I'm looking at my fan for some reason. Like my fan is giving me cool air, and it's like my slave, and it has no thoughts and feelings or emotions. It just works for me. And if I get pissed off, I can kick it and beat it up, and there's no moral. I mean, it's gonna be a waste of.
You're not going to feel that bad about it, you know. And I mean, it's just you just got to buy another fan. I mean,
as we move away
that's how
from
people think of animals right now.
As we move away from animal labor, animals used in as labor. I was watching Family Guy and watching like the episode where Santa Claus, he's fighting Santa Claus on the reindeer, and I'm thinking in my mind, it's so ingrained in our culture, you know, the sleigh, the sled, the horse-drawn carriages, or whatever. Like, we need to get away from these antiquated notions that we need animals for locomotion, that we need to use animals for anything. We don't need to use animals for anything anymore. Like, we have machines and technology, and we have the smarts and the wisdom to do it ourselves. So, but it's all intertwined and completely embedded, you know, in the narrative of culture when it comes to things that are old-fashioned, things that are rustic. We want things that are like kind of a throwback to an earlier time period, but that earlier time period was incredibly exploitative towards animals and women and children. So we have to balance this out, you know?
Well, also not necessarily, because I think what a lot of times people, when they go back to the, you know, the caveman era, or they're looking at the Paleo era, which the Paleolithic era was marked at its very beginning by the start of the use of things like fire and butchering tools and weapons. Well, without those things, humans were not able to kill other creatures. We did, you know, maybe a bug or so, but we did not have the technology,
teeth or the claws,
or anything to be able to kill, to butcher, and to eat because of our high stomach pH. So we have, you know, if we look back before the Paleo era, we see a time of relative peacefulness where we ate nuts and we ate, you know, the food that was in our environment, and we maybe ate a few bugs, but, you know, I mean, the whole thing is we were living in relative peace with our fellow creatures. And I think that's something.
The Ice Age fucked us up, and the Ice Age fucked up everything, you know, for everybody.
There wasn't a lot of plant food during the Ice Age, so we were resorted to scavenging, and then that led to killing, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. So in people's minds, old-fashioned is better, appeals to history, appeals to nature. Like, they always think of the rustic hunter-gatherer, and that's the past. But the true past, our real past, are the early hominids who were still in the trees, and we're just foraging and gathering nuts and seeds and berries and possibly insects and scab. Like, that is we have the Ice Age is like a wall there, and it's like everything during the Ice Age and after we think of it as that's the pre-dawn, that's our history. But our true history, where we were living in more symbiotic relationship with the environment and with the other animals, was when we were frugivores, you know, and herbivores. And I wish we could like just you know, reinstill that, just teach history, teach proper history, that like we're just talking about a very short period of time, and then on to the agrarian revolution. And I think like the Sumerians were the first ones to domesticate animals and stuff. So it was like everything before that, you know, was actually, you know, beautiful and good, and that's the appeal to history that we should be considering. But we're not.
The problem with appeals to history is that it's so arbitrary how far you go back and consider that your history. Because
you go back to when you no longer had tools and unnatural implements, and then you were a natural being. It's like, if you want to get in harmony with nature, you have to think, what is it about my life that is not natural? What wasn't I born with? Well, I wasn't born with this, and I wasn't born with that, and nature doesn't have that. And these are all technological implements that we have layered onto our lives, which we really don't need. And if you go back to nature,
clothing. We didn't have the need for clothing to wear animal skins and whatever, because the climate was different before the Ice Age. It was a subtropical climate,
and we lived in tropical.
could get by. You know, we can get by with like a loincloth or whatever. Yeah.
So picture this: if we
climate change, man.
Back, okay,
so everybody.
So if we were going back to our history, we would all just be living in trees naked, right? Pretty much.
Sounds pretty tight.
Except we would have fur, because back then.
Look at a chimpanzee, and you'll have a good idea of how we probably.
I don't even like chimps. Bonobos.
Bonobos.
Bonobos. They're much more peaceful.
They're
much more loving and you know, sexual.
They're sexually known for
reduce stress. Orangutans are incredibly peaceful, but they can kick your ass if they need to, and they're powerful, like pound for pound. They're incredibly powerful, but they're very, very sedated, you know, peaceful species. So somewhere between a bonobo and an orangutan is what we should really be striving toward. Because
I'm perfectly okay with being.
Oh, cool. Yeah, gorillas.
They're incredible, and pure vegans.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's so many different directions we can go with it. But did you want to say anything, Lucy? I don't want to talk monopolize everything. What?
I'm just listening.
All right, I just want to make sure.
Okay, so let me get this way. We have two Alices on here.
No, just one.
Just one.
Alice and Lucy.
Oh, no, Lucy. I can't. Oh, I'm dead with it. Okay, so we got Lucy, who's the vegan extremist, and we got Alice there. Okay, yeah, never mind. Okay, so I was going to ask Lucy about two things, about the bird and about the hexagons on the wall behind her.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is Horatio. He's my pigeon.
Oh.
Horatio.
He's really awesome. I'm trying to get him more used to me because he's still quite afraid.
He's a real pigeon.
Yeah, he's a real pigeon.
Oh.
He's I have 3 of them. And he's the first one that I got. And he somebody found him and took him into an animal sanctuary after he was maybe hit by a car. And his wing was broken and it healed incorrectly, so he'll never fly again. And his leg on the same side, something happened to it and he walks with a limp. So he's definitely not a candidate for ever living in the wild again.
So it raises the question, you know, like if we were to follow nature's laws, we should have left him, you know, to suffer and die, and then those genetic defects won't get passed on in the gene pool. And
it isn't a genetic defect; he just got injured.
Pigeons will be strapped. What's that?
It wasn't a genetic defect. He just.
Oh, it's just an injury. Well, yeah, I'm just throwing out the philosophical point, like you know, if we. Like certain people have the mentality that we should, you know, let nature do its thing, and then there's others who just naturally have compassion. I see wounded pigeons and gulls, you know, all the time, and their legs are twisted up and whatever, and I want so much to help them and rescue them and stuff. And then other times you can go on like this wildlife safari or whatever, and you're watching animals like brutalize other animals, and you're not supposed to intervene like that. This is like a topic I would love to like address with Trick. We should get Trick on, Chandler, and have him talk about it, because he's all about eliminating suffering in all species everywhere. Like he wants to push the button and just end all life, because he says that life itself is painful and it's full of suffering, so better to not exist, you know.
Horatio.
What?
His suffering wouldn't have been any different for him if it was happening, you know, from another animal, or if he was in a factory farm, you know.
Right.
It doesn't change his pain.
So the question is like, what should we be concerned with? Is it just the animals that cross our path? Is it just what we have influence to where we can intervene? Well,
the problem is we don't have a whole lot of control over what happens in nature, because a lot of it's in like remote areas, you know.
Yeah.
But you know how that's the go-to.
I think we also have our family circle. Let me go back to older models of this, because I think that's what gives most instruction. If you look at what a dog is concerned about, or a pack of dogs is concerned about, they're concerned about what happens to their pack members. They've got their circle of compassion, and it is their pack. And what happens outside of their pack is like, it's not really our business what happens outside of the pack. I mean, nature, in order for big cats to exist, there has to be big prey, unless everybody is fed. Now, this is an issue I was bringing up the other day. How do we allow the feeding of, could we feed the entire planet? Maybe we could. Maybe we could feed every single creature on this planet, and there would be no longer any need for there to be predation. And that is possibly a long-term goal. I mean, I don't think we're even really in the place where we can be talking about it yet, other than in a very far-sighted perspective.
Yeah.
But we can produce enough food for probably the entire planet's worth of animals and creatures, including ourselves.
Synthesize that, and get the taurine and whatever.
Diets. Yeah, with the right macronutrient ratio, the right micronutrient supplemented, we can feed cats a vegan diet.
If I was about to say, so if we can have our animals, our companion animals, dogs and cats, on a vegan diet, and they can live and thrive, and we have the technology to provide that for them, then just take that and sort of extrapolate or project it into mass scale. But first, we got to get our shit together, and we got to stop killing each other, and we got to stop killing non-human animals that
unnecessarily
food right now.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, Trick's attitude is that we should tackle all of it at once, that we should do both. And I'm like, but my angle is more the philosophical, sort of the ideal is, how should we think about this? I care more about how we should actually view this, because it's so complex, because it's like on one hand, it's like we're going to do what we can in our own circle of compassion. On the other hand, we can't do anything about the animals in the wild, so we don't feel bad about them. But if we were out there in the wild with them, we would feel bad. So the principle is still there.
Or if it was someone within our circle of compassion that was being attacked, we would feel bad.
Yeah, well, there is the whole issue that even if we were out in the wild and we saw what was going on, that wouldn't give us the means by which to be able to do something about all of it.
So the other aspect is if we have to have the technological advancements, the influence, the sort of power, the control structure, the way to structure it, to keep it in a controlled way.
And see,
And also be able to convince a tiger not to kill a deer. I mean, that requires a considerable amount of education. Yes, you can bring a tiger, but I have seen dogs being raised with cats.
Sure. We talk about this. I've talked about this so many times on podcasts, where animals that were naturally natural predators, natural enemies in the wild, predator and prey, coexist when they're raised together and their needs are met. When the resources are provided, they can coexist and they can get along. It's like what was it? The Fox and the Hound.
That was the Garden of Eden concept, where all the animals were at peace. All the animals ate a vegan diet.
The point of this is, okay, like, hear me out, because I was trying to get to this point. The reason I'm so it's so evocative for me, and I'm so curious about it, is because that is the go-to excuse. Is, well, animals kill animals in the wild. Well, animals eat other animals. It's a cycle of life. That's the law of nature. So we're part of that. And if that's how carnists and non-vegans automatically think. They always go to that, and they always associate themselves. They put themselves on par, on the same level with carnivores and lions and tigers and bears.
They're not physiologically carnivores. They're physiologically middle of the food chain. They're physiologically vegans. So for them to jump out of their biological niche is not only unnatural, it's perverse.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I deal with it every day. I'm saying the way that we should think, though. Do we see ourselves as part of nature's, the ecosystem of nature's cycles and stuff? Do we intervene? Do we try to prevent harm and suffering to life? Or is a certain level of death and mutilation and even starvation, is that necessary? A certain level of predation in order to keep the populations down, in order to keep everything in balance? And a scientist, a strict biologist, would say, yes, it's absolutely necessary. It's necessary to weed out the weak, through natural selection, through genetic distribution, and all these different things, all these different aspects of evolution. It's like so important that we don't mess with nature like that, and we allow animals to keep killing other animals and all that. So I'm more interested in the philosophical notion of what compassion is that as we grow in our societies and our circle of compassion grows, we care about those within it. Can we continue to allow it to spread to include the entire animal kingdom, or is that sort of anathema to really coexisting and living in symbiotic accord with nature? Because we might be going against what nature has intended. What allows for actually for advancements of our bodies. It allows us to grow stronger, to become faster, to become smarter, to become more cunning, because there are these challenges, because there is competition. See what I'm trying to say? So it's the balance between compassion and competition is what I'm saying, is what is really ethical.
I think there are two models, two ways we could go. We could either go what I call the Garden of Eden model, where all creatures are fed and no one has to predate, and they don't kill each other. That would be a peaceful kingdom. On the other hand, we could go with the existing competitive natural model, where compassion is really just simply having sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. So the fact that we have sympathetic pity and concern does not mean that we necessarily intervene in the natural process.
Right.
I would prefer the peaceable kingdom, but I think at some point we're going to have to choose.
That the compassionate thing to do is to allow animals to sort of act out what's in their natures. But you see how intriguing it is, because it brings up exactly what we're arguing against. We're constantly arguing. I'm trying to get my light straight here. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a million thoughts here.
My view is the way I just approach it is just say, listen, it's not our biological niche. We're outside of our biological niche by doing that. We need to go back into our biological niche and stay there. That's what's healthiest. Or
before the ice age. So it's got to be before the ice age.
Yeah, well, before the tools, before the cutting knives, before the fire. That's when we were with the biological niche.
Shoot, Chandler, go ahead. Chandler's head's going to explode if he doesn't talk. Go.
Yeah, I know. See, and of course, obviously, we could go on forever and forever about this topic, and of course, we obviously can't. In fact, I'm getting kind of tired. But here's the thing about it. I totally see what you're saying, Poffel, about how intriguing this topic is, about how much we interfere with nature or not, and that kind of thing. And the one thing I definitely agree with what you said is that first humans need to get our own shit together, basically. The fact that we can't even convince the other humans to go vegan, even though many of them easily can, means that we're obviously, humans are not working enough in harmony with each other to be in any agreement upon what intervention we take in nature outside of our own species. Anyway, we're not even there yet.
One thing I can say is that humans are very programmable. And what we need to do is we need to start reprogramming humans for a vegan world. And I think that the movements by the United Nations and other high-level organizations that see that the future is vegan, that the fact that new transition foods have been created to get people off the meat diets, and the fact that there's pressure in terms of the climate issues is a favorable thing. And those are all moving us towards the vegan future. And once people are programmed for veganism, it's not a problem for them to be vegan. It really isn't. It's quite the healthiest thing.
Don't let anybody quote you on that. They'll take it out of context. We got to reprogram society to be vegan. We got to indoctrinate and brainwash everyone to be vegan. In a way, they're already brainwashed.
Yeah.
We have to. What's the word? We have to deprogram them.
We need to brainwash. We need to brainwash them because they're brain dirty.
reverse brainwash. Bring them back to their natural biological niche and let them be comfortable with it and safe with it. And
turn them back into fruit-eating, tree-climbing monkeys.
Well, not necessarily, but just simply the people that are apart, not harming others unnecessarily, not farming, creatures, not creating devastating.
Oh, that's a whole other thing. Agriculture. Like, is agriculture? Was it? Obviously, our population just skyrocketed because of agriculture, because of the ability to farm, to grow food, instead of having to seek it out instead of having to forage and hunt. We could store up grain. You know, that like as we developed that capacity, like it started to create all this hierarchy in culture and within our own species of who controls the grain, and then that's how religions were born. And there's all this stuff that ties into it. So is it even a good thing to be able to farm and grow mass quantities of vegetation?
If we want to sustain the current population. Yeah, we do.
I'm sense in an ideal sense, because then who controls the distribution of that food, of those resources? Then you're dependent on those authorities, and that's where the hierarchical structure gets created in culture.
That's why we have too much food in the West and too little food in Africa. There's not an equitable distribution of the food being produced, because we could feed everyone on the planet,
and they're growing
farming animals.
They're growing food. They're growing food for our farm animals.
Right, chocolate. They're growing chocolate and stuff.
Starving.
Instead of being able to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I meant the farm animals, but
of course, I'm probably gonna want to end this soon, because it's almost time where I'm at. But I did want to ask you guys a question. Have you heard of the Malthusian catastrophe?
Yeah, it's when the Earth's resources can no longer keep up the growing population.
Exactly.
Right?
Basically, at a certain point when the population is such to a degree that it's not possible to produce enough food for everybody. And
we're already past that point.
Yeah, I mean, and even if it's true, which it probably is, that an equitable distribution, if all farmland were used for growing fruits and vegetables and all that, it would be possible to feed the whole human population now. Unfortunately, the problem is as soon as there's an increase in the food supply,
they're going to keep multiplying.
Yeah,
which is how
breeding.
Which is how nature works. Populations are responsible to food supplies.
Yeah. And so basically there's an infinite capacity of people to reproduce, but a finite amount of space on the planet that is usable as farmland.
I'm starting to feel, Chandler, I'm starting to feel that controlling population is just as important as anything else. Like if we're going to try to have a sustainable future, like it's literally one of the number one things. Like my antinatalism in terms of priority has like grown up to this.
I know, that's how I feel more and more every day. Like, because when I've considered it, I've considered that this is so sad. It's so counterintuitive, but it makes sense that carnists who, even though they're contributing to animal suffering, if they don't reproduce, compared to vegans who do reproduce, who then end up having children who their descendants become more carnists. When you look at it from that perspective, vegans reproducing is worse than carnists who don't reproduce. And it's like, whoa, it blows your mind. It's like,
I thought you were going to say the opposite.
I thought you said vegans reproducing would be a good thing because their children would probably be vegan.
And yet it's not guaranteed. And even if their children are vegan, their children that they have are not guaranteed. And so you are still having that risk of creating more carnists.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble.
I have heard one woman I saw was posting, and she said, "This is why I refuse to have children, because if I had a child and they were a carnist, I couldn't live with myself."
Exactly.
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up and save this for a whole other discussion. There's some really important things here. But thank you so much, Alice, for all your contributions, and it was great to finally talk to you in real time.
Yeah, I was glad to meet some of these people that I'd never met before. I never met this Alice and those other two people who were on here earlier. I never met
Kelly
them
and Sean.
before.
I thought Sean would have more. I thought Sean would have more to say. He writes like incredibly long.
And guys, I just gotta say this: we just had an earthquake here.
No way.
At least a 4.5, maybe a 5.
You okay? Is your stuff safe?
I'm fine. Nothing fell. It was.
Where are you?
It was significant though that just as you were backing out of the call and everything, the earthquake came. So maybe that is a good sign for the earth having just spoken, and included.
Like the Buddha, I touched the keyboard and the earth speaks for me. You know, the Buddha, you know, is meditating, and then was it Maya tempts him, and then he doesn't speak, he just touches the earth and says, "The earth is my witness."
Yeah, I saw a video on YouTube.
The
about
earth is my witness.
That was weird. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the last thing I said, or who was the last person that spoke? Like whatever the last thing that somebody said, that's the most important thing.
It was. I think I actually spoke when it was happening, so I kind of interrupted you very, very slightly, and then was just quiet while it was going on. So you can hear it on when you replay the audio. I'll say it's.
No way, really?
Quick, yeah.
That's cool. Go back and check that out.
California?
Yeah. It's a rather active zone here. We don't usually get big ones, but we get quite active little ones. We have
every time
activity.
Every time there was an earthquake, I thought it was just a truck driving by and it shook the house. That's what it felt like. And every single time, I don't know what this means, but I was on my bed, so my bed would kind of just bounce a little bit. So I never really felt like the effects. I never really felt like the earth actually shaking. But other people would be out in the street, and it's the weirdest thing. They'll say that the pavement actually rolls. They'll see the pavement like roll like that.
And the telephone poles move and they shake back and forth.
Yeah, I never experienced that. I was always in my room. I was always sitting in my bed or sitting in a chair or something. So
I usually see the lamp. The lamp will move. That's how you know it's an earthquake versus a truck going by.
Yeah.
If the lamp starts moving, you know it's an earthquake.
Yeah, right on.
Like the chandelier.
Yeah.
Well, stay safe, and you know, it was good talking to you. Let's do it again. We should have this weekly, Chandler. I always tell you that we should be doing this
and go vegan.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to or not, but yeah, I do want to get back into doing it. So it was good that we did this.
We have to narrow it down though. We have to have specific topics that we can just, you know what I mean. So it's just because all this information we can just go in so many different directions. So we've got to be selective about it and have kind of like a predetermined topic that we can
have an agenda. Yeah, have an agenda.
Yeah. We used to do it like that, but
yeah.
Well, we'll be in touch.
All right.
Let's keep in touch, Chandler. I'm glad you got the new job, and I'm happy for you. And spend some more time out in nature and take some walks and feel good. And Lucy, I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon. But thanks for joining us.
Great to meet you, Lucy.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, really impressed with those videos. I hope you do more. I look forward to seeing them.
So much.
Yeah, definitely. I try to share them all the time. I'm subscribed to you, but I don't know. I don't get really notifications for it. I don't know
you have to click the bell thing, or it won't always tell you.
Yeah,
you can tag me if you want. I'll make sure they get on my timeline if I see them.
Yeah, every video she's ever made is gold.
They're awesome.
Totally share it.
Oh man. I must be subscribed to 150 YouTube channels, and I don't watch any of them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're asking what these are? They're mirrors.
Oh, mirrors. Interesting. Yeah.
It's kind of like a honeycomb thing going on there.
Yeah, the hexagon tessellation there, it looks like.
Chandler loves geometry. So do I, obviously. So do I.
Yeah, if you see my art, you'll know how I am about regular polygons and fitting them together.
I like organic art. I like the Fibonacci spiral and the torus, and I'm fascinated by natural fractal patterns and things like that.
They're really
trippy stuff. Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. So take care. Be well. Thank you, Chandler, for setting this up.
Yeah.
We'll come up with a title later, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Everybody can just message me their ideas or something, I guess.
Cool. All right, man. Take care.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.